Hey everybody, it's Joker of Players Wanted, and we're here to talk about something interesting tonight. Um, and that is the cancellation of uh, uh, Casevac 2 that was put on by Striker Airsoft Industries. And we're going to talk about what's led up to this now. The only reason I'm doing this tonight, not waiting it, because Tuesday we have an AAR, and I don't want to muddy the waters between the two things. And I wanted to get online, talk about it tonight, because there's a lot of information that's out there. Um, so, full disclosure, I went ahead and talked to several interested parties that about the incident that happened. I did have a conversation with Matt Boyle that lasted about 38 minutes, and I sent him a bunch of questions before I went live to get to see if he actually gave me a written response to the answers. He's not giving me a written response, so I'm just going to base it off of what I remember from the conversation he had with me. But essentially, we're going to talk about this. So, first and foremost, if you're not aware, Casevac 2 got canceled earlier today. Um, we're a little bit over a month away from the event, and obviously that's never good news for the players to hear. But when it goes to leading up to why this happened, it's kind of an eye opener. I was, let's see what we got here. Did I comb my hair? Yeah, no, I did not comb my hair. Well, yeah, I did. I guess it was combed. I took a shower earlier and then combed it when I got out. So, so let's talk about the reason why I even report on this. The reason why I wanted to get online and talk about this is because of what happened at Casevac 1 and how I felt players were injured due to, uh, I don't want to say the word negligence, but due to lack of oversight or lack of forward thinking. You're about to have an event in the middle of You're about to have an event in the middle of October where temperatures are in the upper 90s. You got to know that things are going to be heated. You got to know that when the windows weren't going to be open, that you might be suffering some heat casualties, and there were quite a few. Um, Several ambulance calls. Last report I heard was that there was a person that had a heart attack out on the field. All right. Um, the lack of water certainly helped, and then contributed to that. And some people were at that point in time were saying, is it really an event host responsibility to provide water? Well, if you know that the event's going to be hot and it's going to be overheating, you should, as an event host, do something to try to mitigate as much as possible. And it's one of the firmest things that I've always believed in. And almost every other southern producer provides some level of water to make sure people don't overheat or they don't have events that are in temperatures that are too high. Now you can't from December to March is usually the safe zone to have events, sometimes in November. Um, but December to March is usually the prime time down here because then it gets too hot to have games. And at the time that Casevac 1 happened, a player, I'm not going to say their name or anything else because they can come out and say or verify or whatnot, had made an offer to provide a pallet of water for a pretty reasonable price. So I think it was like $600 delivered to ensure that people had enough water and stuff there. Uh, exactly. That's exactly why we do the things we do with the stuff that's there. So, Casevac 2, there was a lot of stuff that was like rumored to go around for Casevac 1 that I didn't buy into a lot of it. And I just wanted to, and I didn't really ask the questions. I didn't report on it either, which was one of the key ones. Um, Somebody was saying that, well, there's an individual going around saying that they didn't have insurance on Sunday. Well, they had insurance. I will give Airsoft Industries that they had insurance. Their insurance wasn't canceled. They weren't dropped. They didn't have any. You have to understand, unless there's an insurance agent sitting right there on the site on the day to witness something, having your policy canceled from Saturday to Sunday doesn't happen. Even if you file a claim, it doesn't happen, right? Because there's to be an investigation, has to be approvals and everything else. That doesn't happen. They had insurance for the event. Stop spreading that shit around. It's false. Um, Now, is there a possibility that they could only have had insurance for a 1 day event and they expanded it to two? Sure, but they had coverage. Um, I just been on for just a couple minutes, man. 5 minutes total. So if you guys are out there hearing the nonsense that they're saying that they didn't have insurance, they had insurance. That is a fact. What they didn't have, though, was a permit for Casevac 1. Um, Evidently, that was due to, and this came from Matt, and Matt, I wish you would have given it to me in writing, so I would have given you an accurate thing, but Casevac 1, he had a contract with, a verbal contract with somebody to do the event, and that individual did not own the facility, was not supposed to do anything, and claimed that he got all this stuff. Code enforcement came out, busted him for no permit. The owner of the facility came out and said, "What the hell's going on?" So there was a lot of confusion with Casevac 1 because obviously Matt wasn't in touch with the right people. And I'm talking about Matt Boyle here. Um, so Boyle went into another verbal contract for the facility and to have future events there, and then be uh, the front person to talk to when it comes down to one of the front people to talk to, or like the events manager, events coordinator. I don't know what his exact title was. Um, so if I wanted to run an event there, I would contact Matt Boyle, sign a contract with Matt to have an event there. I would think at that point in time, if I'm contracting with them, everything's hunky dory, everything's fine. Well, turns out that was not the case. So there was no written contract between Stryker Industries and the facility per Matt himself. So if Matt Boyle gave me wrong information, it wasn't. This is what everybody else that has contacted me that was an affected party stated, that it was not a written contract. It was a verbal agreement. Why are written contracts important? Because it gives you breakdowns of who's responsible for what. What are you getting out of leasing the field, doing the field? What is your responsibility as an event host? Do you have to get a permit? Do you have to have insurance? What's your player count? What's your waste remediation are typically inside there? What's your response to injuries or anything else? How do you remediate damage? What sort of terms do you have for payment? Um, what sort of causes do you have if somebody does not fulfill their end of the contract? In the state of Florida, if you don't have a contract, if you don't have a written contract, you don't really have a contract. You could try to go for verbal agreements, but there's so much he said, she said, it's irrelevant, right? So one of the key factors would be if you have a written contract of who is responsible for a permit within the county, city, town, wherever you're doing your event at. Now, um, I had an event at a facility, and we went there. And in the contract, it stated the facility was supposed to get the permit. They had a relationship with the town. They can get approved, go through. Turns out they didn't do their. It did not happen the way it was supposed to happen, and we had to get an expedited process. After being told we had a permit, we did double checks. We still didn't listen to the facility itself saying, "Oh, we have a permit." We went in and introduced ourselves to the town so we can talk to them about the permit to make sure there was any issues that would come up before the event would be addressed. And of course, these are elected officials and sometimes appointed, and sometimes they screw up themselves, they forget, whatever, and you could still run into it. So you always have to be following up for your events. Now, the problem with Casevac location in Arcadia is that they have it's upwards of 3 or 4 different owners of parcels inside the area. So there's easements all the way around. Um, One of the explanations was that those easements are a problem for events. They're also a security and safety nightmare for a game, right? That's why some way the part of the partial maps are always broken up. There's certain buildings that are always out of play, which is fine. That can happen. However, you have to be able to make sure that everything is on board and everything's okay. If you have 3 different owners of the site that you're going to go through, sometimes you have to go through all 3 owners to get agreements to go on there. There was part of the reports that not all the owners were on board. Bottom line is they did not have a permit. The main contact that Boyle was contacting with said, "Oh, we submitted with the county and everything else," but where this place is located, they're not zoned for anything. So Matt turned around. Boyle said, "Well, I don't have. Uh, I didn't know this is what you have to do or anything else." And it's like, bro, you've done 9 events. You've had 9 events to date. You knew there was an issue back in October of last year. Here you are, almost 14 months later, and you have to cancel event. You should have been on top of this. to the players, you owe it to the players to make sure you stay on top of it. You owe it to the other businesses that are coming out there that you should have stayed on top of this. You should have seen, when do I have a permit? When do I go through? It shouldn't be a month before your game. Oh, we got to cancel. Now, if your permit was pulled, that's a different story. If they canceled your permit or whatever, that's a different story. But you relied on the word of another individual that you don't have a written contract with, and what happens after it is that the players themselves. Now, another injured party here is VFA, because VFA went into contract with Stryker to have their end of year or their charity game at Arcadia. And you know, it's really, really, really problematic if you're putting yourself off as the event coordinator of a facility, and there everybody has to give contracts to you and you collect the money to have a thing where you don't actually have a full realized thing. That's incredibly problematic. And Matt made a statement multiple times that, it was just, I've never done this before. And like the ignorance of the situation, it's like, look, you had Casevac. You knew there was problems with Casevac. You should have stayed on top of it since Casevac. One, to make sure that nobody's been that you're covered. If you knew that how many different people were involved in this were like all sorts of wishy-washy, you stayed on top of it. You should have been following up until you had something solid in hand that you can move forward. It shouldn't be December when you're like, oh, well, let me just call the county and find out what's going on, only to find out that they're not going to have it rezoned. You're not going to get a special permit. You're not going to have an event there, right? Because now the county could already be leery of you having an event because you had an event without a permit prior. And that's concerning, right? That is incredibly concerning that something like that would happen. So that's what happened here. This is the ultimate breakdown of what happened with Stryker. Me personally, I reached out to people and told them that I was going to go live with this, and a couple of them were mad at me. I don't need to say their names. They know who they are. And I said, well, I'm going to go live with this because it's airsoft news. Just yesterday, we went live about the fact that an adult film was filmed at Miami Airsoft. You might not like that this is news for the airsoft industry. Written agreement with the landowners would be a first. Exactly, Riley. Written agreement is definitely a first, because here's the other thing too, right? As an event host, you have a responsibility to the players that are there. You have to have in writing what let me just back up. So for the player side, you have to make sure your players are covered to make sure there's any safety issues. So when you're going through, you're identifying these safety issues in writing, right? So typically the landowner would give you a list of places you're not allowed to go. Well, if they're putting that on paper, they should also put on paper everything else. You have to make sure the land is insured, because what if somebody has a catastrophic event on a site and your liability insurance doesn't cover the entire thing and they still come after you for more? Usually landowners have their own insurance. You have your own event insurance, and you have to have a policy in place that of what you do for remediation on so many levels. As a landowner, if I own that facility, I'm making sure it's in writing. What is your cleanup going to be with all these BBs all over the place? What is the cleanup going to be for trash? Where people are going to camp? What's the liability of camping overnight? What am I going to do if you damage my structures? None of this is in writing. So Casevac 1, they got lucky where nothing got damaged, although you did have players get injured. And I don't think any of them filed an insurance claim. And I'm not telling them to. I mean, you went out there, you played, you didn't drink enough water. That's on you. Don't be an idiot. But there's so many things, so much risk factor that's involved with all of it. That's why I'm talking about it. And I have not been a fan of how they reacted to Casevac 1. I've been on record saying that, and I'm the same way. Now, the one bit of benefit I was giving Matt before Boyle, like on the phone call I had with him earlier, was that At least he wasn't acting like Milsim Mercs when people started trashing their event and their response was to go ballistic on everybody. Matt was at least staying professional. Matt did go ahead and refund everybody. Um, but there's also like, well, if everybody got refunded, what's the problem? I was like, well, how many people had travel arrangements that they made that they can't get refunded back? That's a major problem, right? If people have unrefunded, if they have non-refundable hotel rooms, because a lot of the hotels in the area do that for this exact reason, it's an economically depressed area. They want their money. What if people bought plane tickets? Those aren't going to be refundable for the most part. So those are there. It's like it's the short-sightedness. You cost players money. At least this time, no players got injured, but players got cost money. Now you have a whole nother event host that contracted with you for the site that it may or may not get fixed in time. So there is a possibility that the site can get its or it can get its zoning fixed and everything else, so they can allow for special permits there. But the secondary issue is if there are easements through the property that cannot be blocked, that's a major safety issue, right? How are these people going to be able to participate or go through or have an event there without going in? I've been to a site where there's an easement that people drive through, and those people knew what was going on. They had their windows up, but can you imagine how bad it is when all of a sudden this big dump truck comes riding down the road, and you're in the middle of a firefight, and they're not part of the game? It does not make for a safe environment. So those questions also have to be resolved of what's going to happen. Can the site actually be secure enough for a game? I've been to the site. I toured the site with another event host. They don't need to be mentioned here. They're not on this channel. So if you come here often, you know who I'm talking about. I went there and toured the site with them. Saying that this site can hold 500 people is only true if you have the majority of the site available to you, not the sections that are being cordoned off. Because if you can't go beyond certain things, you're putting a whole bunch of people into a very small area, and it can cause a massive amount of cluster issues. The site itself is cool, and hopefully that this all can be resolved and multiple games could go forward. But this is definitely the fault of Striker of not having proper contracts in place, not doing proper follow up. I mean, this all falls on Striker. And yeah, they did refund everybody. They should be given a little bit of credit for that. But it's just another in the history of stuff that goes down the line of Striker just making the claim of, oops, we didn't know. Sorry, guys, we won't do it again. There's only so many times you could do that. I can understand if it's your first, second, or third event, something comes up. You are 9 events in. You should know better. And you shouldn't be having these issues. You definitely shouldn't be taking another event producer or another organization's money to in a contract to run an event if you don't have it 100% sure or secured that you have this event for that. And if you haven't gotten a permit for your event yet, and you haven't gotten all this other stuff lined up, you don't have a written contract in your hand, it doesn't matter how many handshake agreements you do, because ultimately it could be like, I never said that. Which is why I'm not saying some of the stuff that I'm saying with the harshness of tones of 100% certainty. I keep saying to you with what's being reported and what's being confirmed. So, all right, let's see here. One thing he wasn't, what Boyle did not really confirm was how many owners were involved in this, if there are 3 owners or not. I know when we were there was a couple of facilities that were on the outside edges that you could not go near because those were active businesses, which again is a safety hazard, right? I mean, if you have people out there when you're running along the fence line, where are your buffer zones? And this is like sometimes you find some of these really cool AOs that you could do a lot of good shit with, but then you look at it and you look closer and you're like, ooh, that road is really close to the fence line. How do we prevent BBs from flying out? It is what it is. I mean, sorry, just all right. That covers most of the stuff that I asked him and what was going down. So really, what brought this all down? Hubris, right? Um, Matt Boyle once again did not follow through and make sure that this site was secure. He did not make sure that he had a contract in place. He did not make sure that he had a permanent place. He did not, permitting and everything else was set up. He didn't have any of that. Now, again, I will say that he had insurance for Casevac 1. If you're making comments that he didn't, you might want to check your facts. Don't do it off of feelings. Ask the questions, because event hosts don't lose their insurance from one day to the next. It just doesn't happen. They could lose it for future events. They could definitely have their policies pulled if they're found to be negligent or anything else. But um, even the actions that happened at Casevac 1, while some of us might think we might have the opinion that it might be negligent. The reality is it's what the insurance company provides. So bottom line, once again, Strike Airsoft made promises. It didn't deliver. Um, it's another one of those things where it seems that they fly by the seat of their pants, and ultimately the people that got harmed on it were the people were the players that were planning to go, the vendors that were planning to go, and the future event hosts that were planning on going there all got burned by this. And that's why we went live with it, so that way people can hear firsthand instead of reading. Um, before I started talking this, I went to go back to read some of the comments, and Stryker Airsoft Industries decided to ban me from their community page, which is certainly their right, but certainly doesn't get any goodwill either. One other thing I addressed with Matt Boyle was the only place that their statement is currently on the event itself. They didn't put it on their main community page for everybody to see. Instead, they hit it on the event site itself. I say hit it because the reality is, if you're not open and honest and putting it in all the places of your social media to let your players know, there's a problem. I mean, hopefully every single one of the players were contacted and let known that this event is not going on. I mean, it'll be funny, not in a good way, if all of a sudden on what is it, the on the 15th or the 12th, all of a sudden a whole bunch, 17th, a whole bunch of people show up and they're like, why are we having an event? Because the first event, there was again no real contract in place because nothing was written, and that was done by a person that really didn't have the authority to do it. So all of a sudden, people are showing up going, what the hell's going on here? We have a whole bunch of people here that don't belong on this site. Code enforcement showed up and everything else. So, yeah. Yes, that's again, Riley. I had a conversation with Matt earlier to verify. I was mostly verifying about Casevac 2. So for sure, Casevac 2 was just a verbal agreement. Casevac 1, Matt said it was between a guy that either was like a previous tenant of the facility. I really don't know the relationship of that individual that Matt was working with originally. I remember him saying that after Casevac 1, the site host went to the site. The landowners turned to them and said, "We're not really happy with this guy. We would like you to work with us to take this over to set up the events there." So the guy wasn't really associated with the higher ups. I don't know who that person was or all the details on it. I'm just saying that for Casevac 1, there was no permit pulled. That Matt, when he was in conversation with that person, maybe misrepresented themselves. I'm not sure all the details there, because really, um, we had a 38-minute conversation, and I forgot some of the nuance for there because I was mostly focusing on Casevac 2. But yes, he did for Casevac 2. He spoke with the proper landowner, assumed himself through a verbal contract of the event host for the AO for future events. That is true. That's what he said for verbal wise, and I believe that that's what happened verbally. But again, I could tell you, hey, you know, go to Key West, go to this one bar, run it for me. We'll have $1 million agreement. You go there, you show up, and What are you talking about? You have nothing to do with it. That guy doesn't do anything. So that's why you have to have written contracts in place, right? You have to be able to be sure that everything is upheld, everything goes through. Because look, this could have been really bad for a lot of reasons, right? And you'd figure after Casevac 1, Casevac 2, you would get stuff in writing. Um, you get it in writing because you want to make sure your ass is covered. Like if you are, I'm just saying this from any sort of perspective. Hey, look, um, I want to run an event at your facility. I'm gonna have this many people. Oh yeah, it's $10,000. Cool, fine. I give you 10 grand. All of a sudden, 500 people show up. Oh no, I want more money. So that almost happened to Doomsday, right? Doomsday had when they had Northern Watch, they had a contract in place to pay the actual field for use of the land, right? And everybody knows the name of the field. I don't really have to say the name. It's that place up there that's named after a dinosaur. Um, when everybody started showing up and they saw how many people were there, they suddenly wanted more money. And you're like, no, we have a contract right here. Here's our contract. You're not getting more money. If it would have been verbal, then what? That's why this industry has always operated off of that. Venue usage agreement, actual contract, any one of those things are what people should be doing. Like if the first time you're running an event, here's some hints. At the very least, you have a venue usage agreement, right? And Matt Boyle did say that, well, when we go to like, say, Wayne's World, we don't need a permit, which is true because that's the use of the field, right? If there's an actual capacity limit within the town, city, or county for that field, you would need to get an exemption permit. But nobody's really exceeded those numbers at Wayne's World. I don't know if they even have a limit on how many people are there. But what's up, Garcia? But if you say you were to try to have 1,000-person event at Wayne's World, which is going to snarl traffic or anything else, that would probably require a special use permit if it's outside the scope, right? And that's ultimately what's down here. This facility was vacant. It wasn't being used for anything. So any of the parcels that were being used or purchased or for whatever things are there, those probably all have specific occupancy licenses that were allowed or maybe not allowed. Maybe they're just outside the thing. And then now the city's focused on it or the county's focused on it, paying more attention because all of a sudden you had 300 some odd airsofters show up to this place and cause all sorts of havoc, interfere with some transmissions. And they're like, oh, what's all this? So there's probably a lot of things that happened in a very short period of time. Some of it's probably not on Matt's head, but a lot of it is. The cancellation 100% is on Matt. It's not on the county. It's not on the location. Matt put on an event without having a permit or a contract in place to make sure the event was going to happen. So hopefully he learns from it and that you guys don't get impacted before. But seeing the history of stuff that's happened with striker events, I don't believe that's going to be the case. I think that stuff like this is going to continue to happen and it's going to be, oops, sorry, I didn't know. Well, there's dozens of event producers out there that were always willing to answer questions and to help out to some degree, especially because they don't want to be planned on top of each other. And Matt's done that a couple times where he's planned events the same weekend as another major event, and Casevac too was probably going to suffer from some of it because another event company is having a really cool event in North Carolina. Again, they don't need to be named. You all know who it is if you watch the stream. This is pretty much a talk about what happened with Casevac too. So, in summary, I personally will never. I personally will not be backing, following, or going to any of the Striker Airsoft Industries events. And I'm going to keep saying it over and over again that I don't believe that they have the players' interest at heart based on what's happening there. Now, some of the employees certainly too. Matt can make the claims that he wants to claim, but in my conversation with him, I still don't believe that sincerity. And because of that, I think that the industry, the airsoft community down here just got harmed yet again. And I hope that people just open their eyes to what happened. And I know that they're going to go through and say, look, they're just trying to kick, that I'm trying to kick them when they're down. No, I don't need to. I'm just reporting on what happened so people can go through and say what the hell happened, because a lot of it is, it's not a permitting issue, it's a contract issue. It's a contact issue between Matt and the site. There was lack of follow up on Matt's side, that you shouldn't be 1 month before the event still selling tickets a day ago, because people were still buying tickets a couple of days ago. Um, when you realized you had a massive problem, you should have probably paused those sales on the site and, you know, waited to hear what the outcome was. And you should have been upfront with your people, saying that, saying this was just a permitting issue is not the case at all. There's a lot more that's going to be involved in it. And this permitting issue should have been addressed, and should have been raised and addressed and had the concerns met back in October of 2023, not in December of 2024. And that's what I'm going through. I'm sorry for the players that don't get a chance to go. I'm sorry if you're watching this and you're pissed off that I'm going after Striker Airsoft, but third time something's happened like this. And no, I'm not going to be going over my thoughts on their BBs, or their gear, because that's a video for another day if I decide to do it. I think people already know what my thoughts are on those two things, and I don't need to go any further. But when it comes to Casevac 2, well, Chris, all right, Chris Lopez, let me say it this way, right? I'm not defending it, but I'm gonna. It's like, it's only fair if I say what I think is really going to happen, right? I am sure they've issued you a refund, right? It might just take a couple of days for it to process through. If the refunds just came in today, it'll probably be next week before you receive it. So I think everybody got their refunds. I think they actually did that and went through by hand and refunded everybody, right? I'm not going to speculate why they still held on to all the money and all that. It's not to do it, but I don't think they're sitting on your money. I think they issued the refunds. You should have them, and you should be fine. Just give it a couple of days to process through, and you should be okay. But I think I think it should be a lesson to anybody that's going to their events in the future of what it is. I mean, somebody asked me about the next mini milsim that's going to happen at Wayne's World. It's going to happen. That one they don't need permits for, so they're going to go there. It's just going to be another mini milsim, though. No, I wouldn't. I haven't been to one of the events for a while. Stupid. That's because you were inside that Miami Airsoft video. Don't lie. Yeah, you just don't have an event. You have to have contracts. I mean, that's what it boils down to. If he would have had contracts right in place, right, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It'll be a side conversation we have in a normal stream. We wouldn't dedicate an entire stream to it. If he would have had an actual written contract and the site failed that contract, that's a different story, right? That's news in itself. Like anybody, I have not heard of Florida Scrim Shop USA. Is that you, bro? I've not heard anything about that place. Um, I'm gonna go when she works, huh? um, so it's one of those things that if he had a written contract in place, and they violated the contract, then this is 100% on the site and the whatever battle they're having with the town or the county. And I'm sure there probably is a fight going on between that site and the county right now. But the county might not be happy for multiple reasons, and we don't know the full details on that. Once we have full details, I'll make a follow up and I'll talk about it or whatever, because that site looks cool if the site could be partitioned off correctly. But the price that they were offering for the site for the portions that we saw that was within the play area, it was expensive. And I don't think it was worth that much, especially with how much stuff you would have to open and go through and do all that. It's a cool site. Don't get me wrong. I would love to play there. I'd love to do it with an event host that has the history, longevity, and could do it right. I would love to go there. Like I was excited for VFA's game because I was going to go to that one if it was going to be there. But yeah, I don't know anything about Florida Skirm Shops yet. USA. Do you know what it is? I think a couple of people asked me about that. I honestly hadn't a chance to look at it. When I looked at it, it looked really small. Yeah, yeah. Let's talk. Yeah, let's. We could always talk about events. What's the smartest thing to do? Like a lot of people don't realize that even though it's cold out, you need to drink water. You can dehydrate when it's cold outside. You're still sweating and not taking in a lot of fluids. Um, I mean, obviously, you sweat more when it's 90 degrees outside. But yeah, I'll answer a few more questions and end this up because I think that I'm pretty succinct about it. If there's any other questions about the stuff that we're there, let me know. But are you sure they had insurance? Yes, I'm sure they had insurance. Y'all don't understand. Like, this is not the first, today was not the first day I heard that they didn't have event insurance. I've always thought that that was bullshit, right? And the reason being is this: it's like I know he was shopping for insurance, and I know he got it because other people made the claims in the past, and I'm pretty sure he got. I mean, he's had insurance for a while. Uh, the best way with explaining it is that even if unless there's an insurance agent for your an underwriter right there for your policy on the site witnessing and seeing something that you've done as negligent, right? You have to be negligent in your duties. Like you're not chronoing people, Bushy Mountain. Um, you're not you're not you're not checking the iPro. You're uh, not marking off hazardous areas. You know an entire floor is unstable, but you send people up there anyway. Something like that that's negligent. They're not good. They have to be on site at the time it's happening in order to pull your insurance. And even then, it could take a day or two for it to actually go through because you would have to think it's Sunday. Underwriters don't work Sundays, Saturdays, Sundays. They work during the week. Most insurance companies work during the week. This is not progressive you're talking about here, right? Where they have claim centers open 24 hours a day. It doesn't work that way. Um, Not providing water is not negligent. I don't think is negligent in the eyes of the insurance industry. It's negligent in the eyes of event producers and some players because it should have been provided knowing the temperatures. We know how they are to help prevent that. I say it all the time. Airsofters are an idiot. Hi, I'm an airsofter. I'm an idiot. Airsofters are idiots. We're going to do stupid shit. And event producers need to plan accordingly, right? Um, Now, if your response is, "Oh well, you're overheating," I guess you're going to get a ride in an ambulance. Well, that's your stance and all that. Unless it was in the policy that you have to provide water, they wouldn't have been negligent. Just like when somebody was using a radio frequency jammer out on the field. Unless Stryker said it's okay to use that radio frequency jammer, they're not negligent because a player brings it onto the field. If they're knowledgeable that somebody had it on site, they should have taken steps to prevent it. But if they had no knowledge of it, you can't stop the players from doing it. Just like if you chrono somebody at, say, 1.55 joules, and they go back to their staging area and they tamper with their gun to intentionally set it to 2 joules, they don't know about it. They go out there, somebody's shooting hot, you then chrono the person, realize they're shooting at 2. Now either you correct that problem or you kick them off the field and ban them from the field and not allowed to back on. Your reaction to it could be negligent or not. But if they say, okay, we don't care, that's negligent if somebody gets hurt, right? So you have to understand negligence is a very ugly word, a very succinct word of blame and everything else. I think it was irresponsible to not provide water to the players in October. Negligent, that's borderline. I think it was irresponsible for the players to use signal jammers. I don't know if Stryker was aware of that they were using signal jammers or not. It only what came out after the fact. So now, did they ban the people for that? Did they catch the person that had the signal jammer and ban them? I don't know. I didn't ask the question. Might have happened, might not have happened. It's not the host unless the host said it was okay. I didn't see anything at the time that said it was okay to use a signal jammer out there. All right, I'm going to give it like 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to go ahead and call it for the night. So if you guys have any other questions, so the bottom line is the other way that I was on the insurance tangent. Another way is that you could have a 1-day insurance policy, which I don't think they had. I'd almost imagine that Stryker Airsoft probably had a yearly policy like most event producers do, especially hosting more than one event per year. So if you had a 1-day event policy or one policy per event, if they had a single event policy and they only had it for 1 day, okay, maybe Sunday might have been covered, but that's not the case. I mean, if you're having insurance, you're going to cover the day before, during, and after to make sure that you have the coverage to ensure that your cleanup is fine so your employees are protected. So that's that. The other thing being that their coverage could have ended, say, on that Sunday. Like their coverage could have went all the way through for the entire year and it ended on that Sunday. Also kind of found that highly suspect that they would have insurance but have it cancel 1 day before their thing and hope that nobody got hurt. It's Florida. It's Florida Airsoft. I mean, you make sure you're fucking covered. There's a couple of people that have gotten away with it not having insurance, but I don't think so. So they had insurance, and also Boyle confirmed he had insurance, and I believe him that he had insurance. Right? Everything that Boyle said, I didn't think that he was a liar. I just don't think with the way their actions are going through that the statement of I didn't know is sufficient enough, that the claims of ignorance were sufficient enough. I think that they should have been aware and go through. So with that being said, I mean, there's not much more to go over on that. That's the reason why like Casevac 2 was canceled. Hopefully we can report in the future that the VFA game's still going to be able to go on there, or we'll report when the next event's going to be. But on a whole, by and large, Stryker, this is another loss for Stryker Airsoft for once again doing something that every single event host would have cautioned them against doing. And it's not like that people weren't there to help them. There's people that were definitely there to answer any questions, to help them out. I know of several people that offered advice and everything else to go through, but it almost seemed as if they knew better and they moved forward, and here we are. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end this in about a minute here, and I'm going to go play some video games. All right. Almost done. So once again, thank everybody for tuning in. I'm Joker with Players Wanted. Until next time, may your BBs fly true and your opponents always call your hits. Good night.